Hi, welcome back to the Fantasy Ball Profits. My name is Rob Skutovic. Thanks for joining me tonight. It's the end of Week 8, Sunday night here. And I want to take a look at some names you should consider for Week 9 for your waiver wire pickups, whether it's injuries or bye-week replacements. But before we get into some of those names, just a reminder at the end of this week how we do the best we can as fantasy owners to look at the analysis or analyze all the statistics, the numbers, the trends to make the best decision possible and do the best that you can. I try to give you the best advice possible. When it's all said and done, I'm reminded that, one, all these players, even the bad teams, even the fantasy players that maybe we would consider not good fantasy players, are still professionals in the NFL, and they're all good players, and there's a reason why they play the game. So even though you make the best decisions you can, there's still going to be an anomaly, people that will buck the trend, statistics, that unexpected thing that will happen. But ultimately, luck favors the well-prepared. So if you keep making good decisions, you keep putting your feelings aside, at the end, you're going to be a winning team, and you go far into the playoffs. A prime example of that, looking at statistics and kind of bucking the trends, is Deshaun Watson. Today, he went into Seattle. And the advice that I kind of felt, the one I went with, is I feel like Watson's going to be a phenomenal quarterback. I love the guy. I've got him in one of my keeper teams, one of my keeper leagues. But he's going into Seattle as the first real defense that he had faced. Up to this point, a lot of the defense he had faced were really weak against the pass. He's going into Seattle. And under Pete Carroll, during the time that he's been in Seattle, only one rookie quarterback has ever went in there and won a game. And so everything kind of pointed that this would be a real test, that he maybe take a step back. And so the advice was, let's just see how he does, and maybe you should sit him and go for another option until we can see how he performs. Well, he went out and he was lights out. So one of my observations, first of all, is Deshaun Watson is the real deal. This kid is phenomenal. In fact, today he set a record for most touchdown passes through the first 7 games. But he's also a reminder to us in fantasy football. He's a reminder as to why you don't take a quarterback early in the draft. There's just more and more quarterbacks out there producing now. The league has become more passer friendly. In fact, you can just see the trends. If you go back to 1994, if you hit 30 touchdowns, that was a plateau that was really hard to hit. In fact, back then only 3 quarterbacks hit it. It was Brett Favre, Steve Young, and Dan Marino. But in 2015, 11 quarterbacks reached that plateau, with 2 more ending with 29 touchdown passes, and 3 quarterbacks were on pace for 30 before they got injured. And so we just always tell people at the beginning of the year, one of the things that we really promote here at the Fantasy Ball Profits is don't take a quarterback early. In fact, going into this week, if you look at the quarterbacks that had averaged the most points per game per week, you look at the top 5 guys, with number 1 were Deshaun Watson, Carson Wentz, Dak Prescott, Tom Brady, and Kirk Cousins. And so going into this week, those guys were top 5 in terms of average points per week that they were scoring. A lot of them were out of the top 12 in terms of where they were drafted, or a lot of them went undrafted. So just a reminder, Deshaun Watson's another reminder to us that you don't have to take a quarterback early. There's always guys you can pick up. That's the one position in fantasy football where you don't have to hit the panic button if you're struggling there. So anyways, I want to go ahead and break this down. Now this week, the teams that are on a bye are Chicago, Cleveland, you got the Chargers, Minnesota, New England, and Pittsburgh are all on byes. Some of the injuries to consider at this point, we got Chris Hogan. Sounds like he had a shoulder injury today. The wide receiver for New England, he was seen in a sling afterwards, so we don't know the extent of that injury. Chris Hogan once again left the game, left the arena today with a shoulder injury. Zach Miller sounds like he dislocated his knee, probably going to be done for quite a while. So those are some of the injuries. Now, one of the things we would say is we give this information you need to put in the context of your league. Once again, I don't know your scoring systems. I don't know your bench depth. I don't know who's out there. I don't know any of these things. So you got to take this year and put in the context of your league. But if you have specific questions in terms of your league and what you think we should do, we'd love to answer them. Put in the bottom of the video, and we would answer those for you. So here's some names that we want you to consider. Now, before we do it, we're going to switch it up. Normally we get into the quarterbacks, but this week we're going to start with our running backs. The first guy I want you to consider, and I can't believe I'm still talking about this guy, is Aaron Jones. He's available in 20% of leagues. Now, 20% is not a lot, but yet if you consider how good this guy is and what he's doing, it's insane to me that he's still available in any leagues. So if you're one of the guys out there and you're in a league, or if you're a lady out there and you're in a league and he's still available, you need to snatch this guy up immediately. This guy is a complete back. He has all the skills necessary to be successful. He's explosive. He has good size, good hands, great vision. He's just as talented as Hunt, and everybody loves the running back out of Kansas City. Now, early in the year, we had stated in a lot of our videos, even on our website, that Ty Montgomery, we just felt like he wasn't going to be a long-term answer at running back. And sure enough, Aaron Jones has taken over. He is the lead back there. I can't believe he's available in 20% of leagues. You guys need to get Aaron Jones. He needs to be on your team. And this guy is huge dynasty value. So in 20% of leagues, pick Aaron Jones up. Get him on your team right now before he is gone. Another guy out there that we have talked about a lot lately is Alec Collins. Now, he's available in 67% of leagues. Now, we have talked about him for weeks, and he's really the best back on that Baltimore team. He's looked great. But he had a breakout game against Miami Thursday night. He had 18 carries for 113 yards. He was unstoppable. And he has a yards per carry in the year of 6.0. And he's got by far the best skills of all the backs on that team. Now, he's a guy that needs to be picked up. He needs to be on your bench. And he's moving to that category of running back 2 or 3 status. He's really becoming relevant. Now, I want to caution you guys a little bit there. For some reason, the Ravens coaches seem to want to limit his touches. We're not sure. We know he struggled earlier. He fumbled the ball a few times. I'm not sure what it is. But even last game where he did so well, Allen was right behind him. Allen had 18 touches and Collins had 20. So he's a guy definitely that's moving to that category of running back 2 and 3. You need to pick this guy up. But you can't expect him now to become your number 1 guy at this point. But you got to pick him up. He's a guy you got to have on your bench. And he's even worth looking at starting on certain weeks depending upon who you have out there. Currently, Alec Collins needs to be picked up. Had a huge week. Another guy out there that we looked in the waiver wire, he's not available in a lot of leagues. He's available in 16% of leagues, and that's Marshawn Lynch. Now, basically what this guy is at this point of his career, he's past the age of 30. He's on the downside. His yards per carry 3.7. He's basically just a plow out there. He's going to get carries at the goal line between the tackles, so he's not a great fit, but he's a guy that you certainly can pick up on a bye week, or if you have an injury to plug in, he might get you that 60 yards in a TD. Another guy that's still out there in about 53% of leagues, Orleans Darkwa. Once again, he's out there in 53% of leagues. Now, he took a step back last game. He only had 9 carries for 35 yards, but the biggest reason why he didn't have a big game is because they fell behind to Seattle and they had to throw the ball a lot. They kind of abandoned the run. He still has a healthy 5.4 yards per carry this year. And what we have to assume that the Giants are going to want to do going forward is they're going to want to run the ball a lot to take pressure off of Eli Manning and that terrible offensive line. So they're not going to want Eli Manning to throw the ball 35, 40 times a game, and they're going to want to run it a lot. So we expect they're going to use him a lot, and he's still out there once again in 53% of leagues. So if you need a running back, pick up Orleans Darkwa. Isaiah Crowell, he's back on relevance, on the map of relevance again in fantasy terms. He really struggled. He kind of been playing himself out of a job, but he's available in about 23% of leagues. Now, he's going on a bye. He's not playing this week, but here's why we're bringing him up. He's a guy that you may want to pick up, because if you wait out there, a lot of their owners will snatch him up even though he is on a bye week. Now, he's shown signs of life today. He had a really tough matchup against Minnesota Vikings defense, and he looked really good. He ran hard. He had a TD, and he had 4 catches for 54 yards. And that's the second time now, second week in a row that he's had 4 catches. So there's a chance this guy could have a rebound second half. He at times looked like he's had a lot of skills. He's very talented. Once again, he struggled early this year. But today's game might be an indication that maybe he's going to start to run the ball with more authority and be more effective. So you got to grab him out there. And when he comes back out of the bye, he faces the Rams, who give the 3rd most points to running back. So Isaiah Crowell is a guy that you may want to pick up. Another guy out there you want to pick up is Alfred Morris. Now, Alfred Morris is available in 63% of leagues. Now, the reason why you need to pick him up is Ezekiel Elliott is going to find out this weekend whether or not that suspension is going to stand or not. But if it does stand and he has to do a 6-game suspension, Alfred Morris will become your starting running back there for the best offensive line in football. And so having Alfred Morris being essentially a running back 1 for 6 weeks could be a huge boost to your team and get you over that hump and into the playoffs. So Alfred Morris, need to pick him up just by chance if Ezekiel Elliott has to serve his suspension this year. Another guy out there that you can maybe look at is Ameer Abdullah. He's available only about 12% of leagues. He's got a good matchup coming up this week against Green Bay, who gives up the 7 most points to running backs. But he has limited upside. He's really running back 3. And but he's technically the starter at this point. So even though he hasn't looked great, he's going to get you some carries. In fact, I would say he probably falls more into that running back 3 to 4 category. But he is out there if you're really desperate. Another guy you may want to consider out there is Corey Clement. He's available in about 99% of leagues. Now, he's a guy that I would consider a deep stash. He's not a guy that you're going to pick up. You're not going to play right now unless something were to happen to Garrett Blount. If he gets hurt, if Blount gets hurt, then once again, you could look at this guy. But he's somebody that if you're in a dynasty league that you could put on your bench, store away maybe. Or is a guy that maybe you want to pick up, but definitely keep on your radar. He's looking better and better each week. He's overtaken Smallwood in terms of production. He's a young, talented running back, looked great in the preseason. And with Blount being older, and the fact that he's just a more talented, certainly a guy I think they're going to see more carries as the year goes on. Matt Breida, another guy that we've talked about many times. He's available in 91% of leagues. Now, there's another report coming out. There's been a lot of talk in the last, I don't know, maybe month coming out of San Francisco that they might trade away some of their veterans to build to the future. Once again, another report this week that they're looking at trading away some of that younger, or some of that older talent, start playing some of the younger guys that they have. Now, exactly who that is, whether they get traded, we don't know. It's a lot of speculation. But if they trade away Hyde, which is one of the names that's been tossed out around there, that would immediately make Matt Breida the starter there. And today he looked good. He had a receiving touchdown. He actually outperformed Carlos Hyde. He's a guy that you want to put out there in a deeper stash, somebody you could throw on your bench. Don't want to pick him up and start him right now, but you could put him out there and kind of wait and see how this all plays out. Another running back out there is Alvin Kamara. He's available in 14% of leagues once again. Now, we talked about this. Why don't I talk about guys that have more availability and guys that are available in 90% of leagues, 95% of leagues? Well, here's why. Ultimately, I could find a lot of guys that are out there in 90, 95% of leagues, but if they ultimately don't have a lot of talent, why pick up a guy and play a guy that's not going to produce for you? You still need to find production. So that's why we're focusing on some of these guys that maybe aren't widely available, but you actually can get some production out of them. And here's one of them, Alvin Kamara, available in 14% of league. He had another good game today. Now, the Saints have won 5 games in a row. And here's kind of what they're doing. They're changing their philosophy. Back in the day, they'd air it out. Drew Brees to throw the ball, 35, 40 times a game, 300 yards. That's what they did. But now they're focusing. Their defense has improved, and they're running the ball. That's really the focal point of their offense the last few weeks during this winning streak. So I think this offense can actually maintain and feed both Ingram and Kamara. They found a way to do it the last few games. They're both very productive, and he's a guy that's young, talented. He's a guy you need to pick up, and you can certainly play. Now the guy out there is Frank Gore. Available in about 30% of leagues. This guy's 34 years old. This is probably going to be his last year. That's my assumption. Who knows how long he's going to play. He had a good line today. Had 16 carries for 82 yards. He's not going to be great. He's not spectacular. In fact, Marlon Mack, I should say, is a younger back, much more talented, much more explosive. They're using him more and more in the passing game. But he's still the guy that's going to get the carries at the goal line. He's still the guy that they're going to trust when they're trying to secure the ball late in the game. Once again, not spectacular, but sufficient out there. Now, he does have a tough matchup with Houston. So, it's a guy that you're going to probably pick up if you're a little more desperate. A couple guys out there that aren't great picks and aren't get you a lot of yards, but if you look at Robert Kelly and Jonathan Stewart, they're out there in a lot of leagues. Now, they both have lower yards per carry. They haven't looked very effective at all, but they're going to get goal line carries. In fact, they both had touchdowns today. They were kind of goal line plunges that they had. Not great picks up, but other guys you could plug in there, and maybe you could get yourself 40, 50 yards in a TD if you're really desperate. Now we'll look at some quarterbacks you may want to consider if you're desperate for one. Another one out there that quarterback considers Jared Goff. He's available in 64% of leagues. Now he plays New York Giants, who gives up the 6th most points to quarterbacks. Now right now, in terms of like average points per week, Goff sits at about 15 to 17 in terms of how many points he scores. But you have to consider that he's right in the middle of the pack, but he's had a really tough schedule. He played Seattle, who gives up the 4th fewest points to quarterbacks, and he played Jacksonville, who gives up the fewest points to quarterbacks. And he's actually coming up in weeks 12 through 16. He has a much more passer-friendly schedule. He faces teams like Tennessee, New Orleans, Arizona, Philadelphia. So Jared Goff is a guy that you can definitely look at coming up this week and some of the other weeks coming up. He's a guy out there that's available in 64% of leagues. Tyrod Taylor is another one who's out there in about 50% of leagues. Now, he faces the Jets this week, and they give the 15th most points to quarterbacks. He's got a low ceiling, but he's a serviceable quarterback. I'm not huge on him. They don't have a lot of wide receivers, but he's sufficient. He gets it done. He's a guy that'll get you about 15 points in terms of like Yahoo standard scoring. Now, some of you out there might be tempted to pick up Eli Manning, so I just want to throw some numbers out there for you, and you can decide whether or not you would have him. He's available in about 59% of leagues. He's playing the Rams. They give the 12th fewest points to quarterbacks. But right now, if I was you, and if you're considering starting him, I wouldn't. They don't really have a lot right now. It sounds like Sterling Shepard should be back this week, so you get wideout back. But they've had so many injuries. He struggled early in the year, even when he had Odell Beckham and Marshall and Shepard and all these guys healthy. He struggled. Now he's just getting Shepard back. Their offensive line is a mess. So he's a guy that I definitely would not look towards if I'm looking at picking up a quarterback. Another guy out there is Brett Hundley. He's available in 91% of leagues, taking over for Aaron Rodgers after Aaron Rodgers broke his collarbone. Now, last game that he played, he kind of salvaged last game with 44 yards and a rushing TD, but he really struggled in the passing game. He faces Detroit, who gives up 8th fewest points to quarterbacks. But if you look at Detroit tonight, they did give up some passing yards. In fact, they got lit up by Pittsburgh, and they did get lit up by Cam Newton in Week 5 for 3 TDs and 300 yards. So they've looked pretty good, but lately Detroit's looked more and more suspect to the pass. And once again, Brett struggled the last game that he played. But I'm thinking now he was kind of put in that situation. He had a week to prepare, and now he's had a couple weeks to play with the first team to work on practice. He's had a bye week to tweak and improve a few things. So I think we're going to see that he's going to improve. He's a guy that, even though I'm not really comfortable with, I'd certainly roll with him. And here's why. He's just got too many good weapons around him to ignore. He's got Nelson, Cobb, and Adams. So with the lineup that he has, you could certainly roll with him. He's available at 91% of leagues. Another guy out there is Jay Cutler. He missed last week with a broken rib, but they're expected to return this week. Now, he struggled weeks 2 through 5. He really struggled, but then he started to show improvement in week 6. He looked pretty good, and then week 7 before the injury, he looked good. Now, this week, he should get DeVante Parker back, and he plays the Raiders that give up 16 most points to quarterbacks. So you can roll the dice with a guy like him. He's inconsistent. Personally, I'd rather look elsewhere. But at time to time, Jay's had some big games. So if you want to roll the dice, he could come out big for you this week. Another note, there's Trevor Siemian, available in 61% of the leagues. He plays the Eagles, who give the 10th most points to quarterbacks. Now, we'll have to wait and see how he does tomorrow night. Once again, Sunday night, so Monday night he plays Kansas City. It'll be interesting to see how well he does. He should get Emmanuel Sanders back. That'll help. He's slightly above average, and that's probably giving him too much credit, really. He's had 2 good games this year. Otherwise, he's looked very pedestrian. He's got 8 TD passes versus 4 interceptions in the year. So he's a guy that you can roll with out there. Hopefully, there's other options for you. Another guy out there is Joe Flacco. He's available in 87% of leagues. He plays Tennessee, who gives up the 14th most points to quarterbacks. Now, the last 2 weeks, he's had 2 TD passes and 0 interceptions, but his yards totals have been very low. He's averaged 143 yards passing. For the year, he's got 6 TD passes to 8 interceptions. He's a guy you can use in a spot start if you're desperate, but I would shy away from Joe Flacco. So here's a guy out there that actually has really moved into the realm of relevance, and that's Josh McCown. He's available in 46% of leagues, and he's actually having a pretty solid season. In fact, in the last 4 games, he's got 9 TD passes and only 4 interceptions, so he's looking better and better. The Jets actually are surprisingly playing some really good football this year. They play Buffalo, though, and here's the concern this week coming up, is they play Buffalo, gives up the 5th fewest points to quarterbacks. In fact, Derek Carr today struggled against them, so he's actually a relevant quarterback you can consider. I'm not sure I'd want to use him this week, but after this week, he could certainly be a plug-and-play for you. Jacoby Brissett out there, he's available in 90% of leagues. He had a decent day today against a good Bengals pass defense. Now he's going to face Houston, who gives up the 12th most points to quarterbacks. Now, early in the year, a lot of people had suggested that maybe Luck would be out for the year. A lot of people scoffed at that information, but now it's looking more and more like Andrew Luck might actually be out for the year. He's out having some injuries. They shut him down. He had to get another injection in his shoulder. Who knows what the future looks like for Andrew Luck this year. Now, they're going to play Houston, who gives up the 12th most points, like we said, to quarterbacks. But if you look at Houston, Deshaun Watson, they're putting up a ton of points. So when Indianapolis plays them, it's probably going to it's going to be a shootout. And Indy's going to have to throw a lot just to stay in the game, which means a lot of garbage time points, which I think gives Jacoby actually relevance this week. A guy that you could look at who could be in the range of maybe 15 to 20 points for you. Here's a couple guys. We talked about making no assumptions out there. I saw Marcus Mariota is still available in 15% of leagues, and Derek Carr is available in 12% of leagues. If they're out there, they're definitely guys you need to pick up and play. Here's some quarterbacks to avoid. CJ Beathard. He's available in 95% of leagues, the quarterback for San Francisco. Now, he plays Arizona, who gives up the 7th most points to quarterbacks. Now, his legs keep him relevant. He's athletic. He's able to run the ball. I think he's averaged around 40, 45 yards running the game. But this last game, he really took a step backwards. His quarterback rating was 49. He's really starting to struggle. I would stay away from him right now. Another guy to stay away from this week anyways is Andy Dalton. He's available in 32% of leagues. He plays leagues. He plays Jacksonville. In Jacksonville. And Jacksonville is a very, very good defense. They give up the least points to quarterback. And then to make matters worse, the Jags got better. They traded for defensive lineman Marcel Darius of Buffalo, who back in 2014 had 10 sacks. So an already good defense, a very good defense, got better. In fact, right now the Jaguars are on pace to break the 1985 Bears sack record of 72 sacks. They're currently on pace to have 75 sacks. So this week, stay away from Andy Dalton. He's a guy that you don't want to touch. Another guy out there to stay away from is Blake Bortles. He is available in 85% of leagues. He plays Cincinnati, who gives up the 7th fewest points to quarterbacks. But Leonard Fournette's going to be back this week, and they want to win games. Here's the formula for the Jaguars. They want to run the ball and play defense. They don't want Blake to throw out a bunch. So I would imagine I'm going to try to keep his throws around 15 to 20 if they can. He's a guy that I wouldn't play. Another guy out there to stay away from, another team to stay away from, Cleveland. Every quarterback for the Browns, just stay away from them. They don't have any fantasy relevance at this point. Another guy out there to stay away from is Drew Statton. He's available in 99% of leagues, quarterback for Arizona. He plays San Francisco, which is a great matchup. San Francisco gives up the 2nd most points to quarterbacks. But this guy's a journeyman. There's very little upside. He hasn't done anything that tells me that he's ready to have a good game. Stay away from Drew Statton. Here's some wideouts that you need to consider picking up. There's 2 of them. I want to talk about 2 for Seattle, Paul Richardson and Tyler Lockett. Now, what we're looking at is basically three wideouts for Seattle. You look at Lockett, Richardson, and Baldwin. Now, can Seattle sustain statistics for three wideouts? I actually believe that they can. I believe all three of those guys can have fantasy relevance. And here's why. Seattle has no running game at all. They look brutal. They can't do anything. No, they cannot run the ball. It's not like they're getting, a couple yards per carry. They're routinely getting dropped for 3-4 yard losses. They're terrible. The only way they move the ball is throwing the ball. So Russell Wilson is chucking the ball up there 30, 40 times. I don't know how many 300 yards game he's had in the past couple weeks. Now, today, Paul Richardson had 6 catches for 105 yards and 2 TDs, and that gives him 5 TDs on the year. So Paul Richardson's a guy you need to consider. He's available in 70% of leagues. Now, the guy out there, Tyler Lockett, available in 62% of leagues. Today, he had 6 catches, 121 yards. And next week, they face Washington. Now, here's the thing when they face Washington. What I think is going to happen is that Norman's going to lock up Baldwin. Those two are going to see each other. Josh Norman's going to face Baldwin, and that should open things up for Tyler Lockett and Paul Richardson. So these are guys you need to take a look at out there. They have certainly value. Another guy out there is Robbie Anderson, the Jets wide receiver. Today he had 6 receptions for 104 yards. He's available in 73% of leagues. Now, every week he's been coming out a bigger and bigger role. In fact, he's distanced himself from Curse and Curley in terms of who's the better wideout. I think at this point, he's become the wideout to go to. I actually like this guy. I've kind of stayed away from some of the Jets wide receivers, but I'm starting to kind of gain, he's kind of gained my attention. It kind of has got some favor for me. I enjoy him. So I think he's a guy at 6'3". He's got a big target. He's showed he can be successful in the league. Robbie Anderson. Now, the downside, they play the Bills, which is normally a good defense, but it's funny, the Bills are actually good at slowing down quarterbacks, but they actually give up a lot of points to wide receivers, so go figure that statistic. I don't know. Just look at the stats. Once again, the Bills, good defense, but they give up the 8th most points to wideouts, so that bodes well for Robbie Anderson this week. Another one out there you might look at is Robert Woods, available in 61% of leagues. Now, he's averaged 5 catches and over 75 yards in 4 of his last 5 games. He's really the most consistent wide out there. He's better than Kupp and Watkins at this point in terms of being consistent and a go-to guy. Now, they've got a tough schedule, or they've had a tough schedule up to this point, but it's going to get easier coming up here in the next few weeks. So you look at Woods and Goff and the Rams, they should have an easier schedule in terms of pass defenses. Another guy out there is Ted Ginn Jr. He's available in 28% of leagues. Now, they face Tampa Bay. In fact, Tampa Bay gives up the most points to wideouts. Now, if you've been waiting on Snead like a lot of people did, and Willie Snead was a guy that going into this year I was big on. They lost Cook, so I thought he'd move from the number 3 guy to the number 2 guy and have a big year. But something's going on there with Willie Snead I really can't put my finger on. I think it's kind of a time to abandon the idea that Willie Snead is going to become the number 2 guy. He was back today. He was totally healthy, and he had 0 catches. So the number 2 guy in that team has been Ted Ginn Jr. And he's done well the last 3 weeks, so he's really essentially become the number 2 guy on that team. Ted Ginn Jr. available in 28% of leagues. Another guy out there is Corey Davis. He's available in 74% of leagues. He's back from an injury. He's had a lot of time. He's the first round, 5th overall pick this year. He's got a big frame, 6'3". In the first game, he did really well. He had 6 catches, 69 yards, looked really productive. Got hurt, missed some games. He's going to be back. A lot of people have forgotten. He's off their radar, but he's a guy that you need to pick up. Has value this year and definitely has huge value in dynasty leagues. Another one out there you need to look at is Marvin Jones. He's available in 26% of leagues. He faces Green Bay, who gives up the 9th most points to wideouts. He had another good game today against Pittsburgh, and Pittsburgh is very good against the pass. Today he had 6 catches for 128 yards. He's had 2 good games in a row. Marvin Jones is a guy that has huge value right now. Another guy I want to talk about briefly, we don't have a slide up there for him, but I want to talk about Chris Hogan. We talked about how he had gotten injured, his shoulder injury. We don't know the extent of that injury, and his arm was in a sling after the game. So what does that mean? Who's going to step up? Well, Danny Amendola certainly could do that, but at this point, I don't think any wide receiver is going to have a lot of relevance because what I think we're going to see, and we saw a little bit today, is guys like Gronkowski, White, and Rex today had a combined 22 targets. So that's a team that's not afraid to spread the ball around to their tight ends, their running backs. That's where I think those targets will be absorbed. If Chris Hogan ends up missing time, don't get too excited about any wide receivers out there stepping up and having the same production he had. I don't think you're going to see that happen. Another guy out there is Jamison Crowder. He's available in 40% of leagues. Now, he seemed poised after the departure of Deshaun Jackson and Pierre Garçon to have a big year this year. It's his 3rd year, and a lot of people thought he'd have a breakout year, finally break 1,000 yards receiving. I was one of those guys that really felt he was going to move into that 1,000-yard plateau. And he really struggled the first 6 games, and we don't know why, what's going on there. Washington coaches said they're going to give him more involved, give him more playing time. It didn't happen. Well, today, looks like it finally happened. He was highly involved. He had 9 catches, 123 yards, and he looked like the wideout that many people thought he could be. And so somebody has to begin to rise up and become the go-to guy in that offense. Tyler Pryor is disappointed this year. Josh Doxson is a guy that's young. He had a touchdown today, but he's just not quite there yet. And so Jameson could be that guy for you. He's available in 40% of leagues. Had a big game today. Hopefully it's his coming out party. Another one out there, Sterling Shepard, available in 44% of leagues. Now he's a very talented, solid wide receiver. He's a second-year wideout, and right now he's the #1 guy for the Giants. Everybody's out. You got Marshall's out. Odell Beckham is out. So besides Evan Ingram, their tight end, he is their #1 guy there, and he should be back this week. You need to pick him up. He's going to have huge value for you. So here's going to be, for a lot of people, maybe the #1 waiver wire claim this week, and that's JuJu Smith-Schuster. He's available in 55% of leagues. I picked him up a couple weeks ago. I stashed him on my bench once again. Just like we've always preached here, don't leave dead space on your bench. Always pick somebody up. If there's a guy on your bench that's not relevant, dump him, pick somebody up. Pick up a young guy like this, put him on your bench. You never know when he'll break out. You know what? Tonight he broke out. He had a huge game. He had 7 catches, 193 yards, and a TD. But even going into this game, there were indications that this was going to happen. One, Bryant was sat today. He's been demanding a trade. He's been very ineffective. Pittsburgh loves this guy. They've been talking all preseason about how big they are on him. He has 4 TDs on the year. And now coming up, Pittsburgh has a very passer-friendly schedule. And so JuJu Smith-Schuster is a guy that you need to pick up. This guy has got a lot of talent. And the beautiful thing about it is teams can't focus their defense because Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell are going to take that focus off of him. And so I expect him to have a really good year from this point forward. How about the Jaguars wideouts? If you look at Marquez Lee and Allen Hurns, they're both available in 65% of leagues. One, Blake Bortles is not good. This team is a really ball control team. Once again, they want to run the ball, play good defense. But somebody has to get targets there. So if you're really desperate, you can look at these two guys. Now, Allen Hurns is kind of at a nose for the end zone. A couple years ago, he had 10 touchdowns. Well, if you look at Lee, Marquez Lee kind of tends to be more a guy that has PPR value. But neither of them are great. But they're guys you could use in spot starts right now if you get really desperate. Now, Lee, the last 2 games, has probably been the better of the two. He had 5 catches for 83 yards and 4 for 72 yards. So somebody you could play. Now, they play Cincinnati this week, who gives up the 4th fewest points to wideout. So you certainly can spot start these guys, but don't do it this week. Wait. Then you got Kenny Stills. Kenny Stills is available in 42% of leagues. Now, the last 3 games he's been really good, and Kenny Stills has value for that team. He can have value for you, but that's only while DeVante Parker is out. Once he's back, Kenny becomes a 3rd option in the passing game, and the 3rd option in a very average offense or below average offense. So he has value, but once again, once DeVante Parker comes back, he doesn't have a lot of value. Now, if there's such a thing as a wide receiver handcuff, this could be it. What you could do is you could handcuff him with DeVante Parker, who's still available in 24% of leagues. You could have both of these guys, depending upon who's playing, start the other one. Now, DeVante Parker, once again, available in 24% of leagues. He looked really solid before the injury. He's by far the most talented wide receiver on that team, and he should be back this weekend for the Dolphins. DeVante Parker, once again, available in 24% of leagues. Sammy Watkins out there. Sammy Watkins available in 22% of leagues. Former 1st-round pick. You guys really trending downward at this point. Doesn't have a lot of value. He was traded from the Bills to the Rams. Everybody thought he was going to have a breakout. He's had 1 good game. Beyond that, he's been really quiet. Woods right now is a better quality wideout on that team. But here's the thing. Here's why you need to pick him up, even though he's, like I said, he's available in 20% of leagues. He's just far too talented to leave out there. He's a guy that I would probably pick up if you have room on your bench just to stash him. Once again, he's too talented. He has too much potential to let sit out there. Former 1st-round pick, has a lot of potential, a lot of talent, a lot of gifts. So he's a guy that you should pick up and stash just to see what happens next couple weeks. Sure, Matthews is out there. He's available in about 30% of leagues. They play Baltimore this week. He's an okay guy that you can take a look at. He's not great, but he's serviceable. Jeremy Maclin's available in 46% of leagues. Now, he's been limited this whole year with injuries, but in the limited time that he's played, he has 3 touchdown passes. In his career, he's actually been a very reliable wideout, so he's a guy that you can look at if you need somebody out there. And some other guys to maybe look at. Some deeper sleepers out there is a Trey McBride, 2015 pick. He's a 6-foot wide receiver out of William & Mary, and he plays for Chicago. Today, he had 9 catches for like 93 yards. That offense doesn't have a lot out there, but he's one guy that shows some potential. Don't pick him up. Just keep him on your radar at this point. Another guy out there is Martavis Bryant. We talked about he's really out of favor with Pittsburgh. They're looking at possibly trading him. Rumors are teams are inquiring whether or not they can get him. So right now I wouldn't pick him up unless he gets traded. So just kind of watch and see how that plays out this week. This week is a trade deadline. The other guy out there is Andre Holmes for Buffalo. Now right now in the year he's got 3 TDs. and he's seen an increased role week after week. And at this point, no other wideouts look that great on the team. In fact, of all the wideouts, he's probably looked the best. I wouldn't pick him up yet, and I certainly wouldn't start him, but just kind of keep him on your radar. Now I'll talk about some tight ends you need to consider. Well, the first one out there is Jack Doyle. He's available in 51% of leagues. Today he had a career game, 12 catches, 121 yards, and a TD. Now, what I think you're going to have happen now, Andrew Luck goes to his tight ends more than any quarterback in the NFL. And we're starting to see that with Jacoby Brissett. Maybe it's how it's designed in their offense, but I think what's also happening is offensive line is having a hard time protecting them, and they can't get the ball down the field. In fact, T.Y. Hilton has really become he's a guy that you're probably not going to even start for the next few weeks. Something changes. I've got him on my team. I'm not going to play him the next couple of weeks. Something's got to change. They just can't get the ball downfield. They can't get into his hands. So they're checking it down, and one of the guys they're checking it down to is Doyle. He's seen more targets, more increased looks each game. He's a guy that's available in 51% of leagues. Another guy out there, Evan Ingram, is available in 20% of leagues. And the last 2 weeks, he had 5 catches, 82 yards, 6 catches, 60 yards, and 2 TDs. This guy is full of talent, skills. They talked about him. They praised him all the way through camp, preseason. This guy's got all the ability to be the next Gronkowski. He's so talented, so you got to pick this guy up. You can start him right now. And if you're in a dynasty league where you have to have a tight end, you need to get this guy. Pick him up right now. Another guy out there has some values. Jared Cook is available at 60% of leagues. He has a good matchup coming up here, and he's been very productive the last 2 weeks. A couple defenses you may want to look at. We only talk about these. I'm not going to talk about some of the really good defenses out there. I'm going to talk about some defenses that are widely available. Buffalo versus the Jets. Buffalo available in about 54% of leagues. Jets give it the 10th most points to defenses. Another one out there is Arizona versus San Francisco. And Arizona's highly available defense out there, so they're a sneaky pick that you could pick up if you're desperate. And San Francisco allows a lot of points. In fact, they've allowed 9 sacks the last 2 games. In the last 2 games, they've given up an average of 17.5 points to defenses since the rookie has started. So once again, you could pick that up. And so another thing I want you guys just to consider out there, depending upon what your record is, if you're in a dynasty league, this is advice for you guys. You're in a keeper league, a dynasty league. If you're 2-6 right now, if you're 1-7, it's pretty discouraging. Pretty much your year's over. Let's just be honest. Okay, if you're 2-6 and 1-7, your year's done. Doesn't mean you can't enjoy fantasy football. In fact, here's what you need to do. You need to begin to think about next year, rebuilding, making that right trade, scouring the waiver wire for young players, build your bench. Right now is when you can begin to build a championship for next season, so don't give up on it. If you have any questions, thoughts, concerns, message us on Facebook or on the bottom of our YouTube channel on our videos. Thanks for joining us at the Fantasy Football Prophets. God bless.